Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In continuation of our virtual lesson on the classical cultures of Nigeria, for today's lesson, we are looking at a culture from the southeastern part of Nigeria named Igbo Ukwu. Igbo Ukwu is an object dated back to 9th to 10th century AD. The work belongs to the oldest bronze casting traditions in sub-Saharan Africa, pertaining to a highly ritualized agricultural society ruled by a priest king. Igbo Ukwu presented a well-organized, centralized society with flourishing commerce, agriculture, arts, craft production, and elaborate religious tradition. The origin of Igbo Ukwu. Igbo Ukwu is a small village near Awka, the capital city of Anambra State in southeastern part of Nigeria. It is surrounded by 4 towns, namely Onitsha, Awka, Nnewi, and Obosi. The people of Igbo Ukwu are predominantly farmers, traders, and artists who are involved in basket making, iron smelting, and blacksmithing, as seen in this Igbo Ukwu rope pot, one of the magnificent pieces from that region, Igbo Ukwu. The Igbo Ukwu region or Igbo Ukwu town has a population of over 50,000 people, but not up to 100,000. Igbo Ukwu, unlike other traditions, came as a result of accidental discovery. It was the first accidental discovery that led to the subsequent discoveries made at the other 2 sites of Igbo Ukwu by Thurston Shaw. How did it happen? One day, inside the Anozie compound, Isaiah Anozie, the eldest of the 3 brothers, Isaiah Anozie, Jonah Anozie, and Richard Anozie, they are 3 brothers of the same parents, Mr. Anozie. So Isaiah was digging for a well when he stumbled on some pieces while digging for the well. So the 3 sites of Igbo Ukwu, they are Igbo Isaiah, Igbo Richard, and Igbo Jonah. Like I said earlier, Igbo Ukwu tradition dates back to 9th to 10th century, and the first discovery was made in 1938, while the later discoveries, the 2nd and 3rd, at Igbo Richard and Igbo Jonah sites, were made in 1959. The first Igbo Ukwu site, Igbo Isaiah. Isaiah, like I had earlier said, is one of the Anozie brothers, whose name is Isaiah Anozie, but was later known as Igbo Isaiah after the discovery of the object for the sake of convenience and identification. The first accidental discovery was made by Isaiah Anozie in his compound while digging for a water cistern for the collection of rainwater. The most beautiful of the artifacts collected in Igbo Ukwu generally were discovered in this site. Part of those objects discovered in Igbo Isaiah sites were Igbo Ukwu rope pots, altar stand, beaded chains, a bowl on a stand, a shell surmounted by an animal, a small crescent-shaped bowl, a pendant representing a ram's head, likewise a pendant representing a human head, among others, were discovered at this site. I'm sure when we are watching the video from the Enugu Museum, you get to see all these objects. These are part of the objects discovered at Igbo Isaiah site. The Igbo Ukwu rope pot and a pendant stand. Also, a human head and a bowl. Pendants and another object surmounted by an animal. You can see the animal on top of the objects. Those are part of those objects discovered at Igbo Isaiah. We now move to Igbo Richard, the second discovery. Igbo Richard was one of the Anozie brothers, like I've said earlier. The discovery made in Igbo Ukwu, in Igbo Richard compound, were made in 1959. Like his brother, his name was Richard Anozie, but for the sake of convenience and because of the discovery, it was later changed to Igbo Richard. The discovery in the home of Igbo Richard were made by Thurston Shaw on his investigative visits to the compound of Igbo Isaiah. You know, having been to Igbo Isaiah, he knew that if other sites close within proximate region of that Igbo Isaiah's house, there is likelihood for them to get objects. So that was what led to the discoveries or the investigative expedition to Igbo Richard sites. Part of the things discovered at Igbo Richard by Thurston Shaw was a burial chamber in which they found human bones and teeth, copper jewelry, bronze ornaments, ivory tusk, over 100,000 beads. You know, that Igbo Richard gives credence to the belief that if a king dies, he will still be a king in the year after. Meaning, the reason why they had to, because at that site, the objects or the skeletons that were discovered there was of a king with some other humans buried with him. Meaning that those people were to serve him in the life after. Another discovery at Igbo Richard. A body was discovered seated on a stool wearing a coronet and a breastplate, holding a flying whisk and a fan holder. The last but not the least is Igbo Jonah. Like his other brothers, discovery was made in his compound by Thurston Shaw in the same year with that of Igbo Richard, 1959. The site was a shrine or a dump site. It was a pit 2 meters in diameter and 3 meters deep. Objects discovered at Igbo Jonah sites include copper and copper alloy, jewelry, belts and ornaments, iron blades, ceramics and a few cooking utensils, human and animal bones, anklets, strings of beads, carved wooden panel. According to Thurston Shaw, This site was purposely dug for placing a collection of ritual and ceremonial objects, possibly after a shrine was destroyed. That was the assessment, or what Thurston Shaw was able to make out of that site based on the discoveries made therefrom. What are those features that we can find on Igbo Ukwu objects? They were produced through lost wax or holocast method of casting. This particular method of casting, it's so technologically inclined that the model objects with wax, then replacing that with molten bronze, while removing the wax to get the objects. Another feature of Igbo Ukwu object is fine decoration of the surface of the object, geometric design of parallel lines, triangles, circles, and raised dots. Overlay of fine thread pellets and spirals. This you can see in the Igbo Ukwu rope pots. See the way the rope or the thread around the rope were intertwined. It's so beautiful. In conclusion, we have been able to see how the accidental discovery by Isaiah Anozie has helped us in further investigating into other places and led to unearthing of other treasures that are bound in Igbo Ukwu region. As we speak, further investigation are ongoing so as to put together the missing links in all of these things. Thank you very much.
Welcome to National Museum Igbo Ukwu Exhibition Gallery with the theme, The Place of Visual Art in Igbo Ukwu Culture. Igbo Isaiah is the first site excavated by Professor Thurston Shaw between 1959 and 1960. It was a storehouse of paraphernalia and ritual objects. Most of the objects included the bronze rope pot, a pot stand, crotals and pendants, and staff head, and more. The bronze rope pot, dated to the 9th century AD, that's pendant representing human head with scarification. The scarification shows that the man is an also titled man. That's a bronze bowl, ornate staff head, pendant medallion, a pot stand, it's also in bronze, another bowl in bronze, this is a vessel in the form of a shell surmounted by an animal, all from Igbo Isaiah. double egg pendant. A pendant representing elephant head, spiral snake ornament. This is a bronze stand depicting a man. You can see the man. Cylindrical staff head. A bronze bowl on a stand, all dated to the 9th century AD. The rope pot. These objects served ritual functions. Some served as vessels in ceremonies, while some were fittings for ceremonial staffs. Igbo Isaiah, which is a storehouse of paraphernalia or ritual objects, was excavated by Professor Thurston Shaw between 1959 and 1960, and the objects recovered includes the bronze roped pot dated to the 9th century AD. There were also crotals and pendants representing human head. There were also the bronze bowls and ornate staff head, another ornate staff head, a medallion. This is a pendant also. This is a pot stand, bronze pot stand from Igbo Isaiah. Vessel in the form of a shell surmounted by an animal. Double egg pendant. Pendant representing elephant. Spiral snake ornament. This is a bronze stand depicting a man. Another cylindrical staff with a snake symbol, all from Igbo Isaiah. Most of the objects were used as ritual objects. Igbo Richard was the second site excavated by Professor Thurston Shaw between 1959 and 1960. It was a burial chamber and also a royal tomb because of the type of grave goods that were discovered, which included 5 human skulls. Bronze horseman's hilt was also discovered in Igbo Richard. Bronze skull of a leopard, also from Igbo Richard. And other goods included thousands of beads and vessels. The third site in Igbo Ukwu was excavated in 1964 by Professor Thurston Shaw under the auspices of the Institute of African Studies, University of Ibadan, and the finds are housed in the University of Ibadan. Igbo Jonah. In Igbo Jonah, the finds include copper chain with about 100 links, 2 iron blades, a small bronze bell, 2 cylindrical bronze staff ornaments, just like this, 15 bronze wristlets, a clear pot with prominent bosses and modeled snakes, and so many other small finds were made in Igbo Jonah, owned by Mr. Jonah Anozie, one of the Anozie Brothers in Igbo Ukwu. It is said that Mr. Anozie Jonah discovered his site while digging for clay to build a house in his own portion of land, and then he saw some strange objects and collected them, but they were not reported widely, so they were not known until about 1963. The first find of bronzes to be reported from Igbo Ukwu seems to have been made in 1938 when Mr. Isaiah Anozie, a retired coal miner, was digging a water cistern for a new compound and struck a number of bronze objects. He dug them out of the ground and piled them against the wall of his house. With his consent, some of his neighbors helped themselves, believing these objects to be good medicine, that is talisman. It is possible, however, that an earlier find had been made in an adjacent area by Mr. Jonah Anozie while digging clay for making compound walls as far back as 1922, but the news did not spread widely. When the news of the 1938 discovery reached the district officer at Oka, Mr. J.O. Field, he quickly visited Igbo Ukwu to see the site and the objects. After interviewing Mr. Anozie Isaiah, the DO bought about 40 objects for a few shillings and later presented them to the Federal Department of Antiquities when it was established in 1946. It is interesting to note that this department later metamorphosed into the National Commission for Museums and Monuments, NCMM. The district commissioner for the area, on his part, Mr. F.W. Carpenter, also visited the site and collected most of the pieces which Isaiah Anozie's neighbors had taken. Some of these were later presented to the British Museum, and some were recovered by the Nigerian Federal Department of Antiquities. In subsequent years, Mr. Kenneth Murray, when he was surveyor of antiquities, visited Igbo Ukwu and recovered some more pieces. And these are now in Nigerian museums. In 1958, the then director of Nigerian Federal Department of Antiquities, Mr. Bernard Fagg, invited Professor Thurston Shaw, a famous archaeologist from Cambridge, to study the materials. Between November 1959 and February 1960, the sites of Igbo Isaiah and Igbo Richard were excavated, and the finds were very rewarding. One of the hallmarks of ancient Igbo Ukwu is the magnificent objects of all sorts that we have found. The elaborate decorations on the pottery vessels and the intricacies of the bronze and copper objects suggest that Igbo Ukwu had sophisticated craft industries and high-class patrons who were committed to commissioning objects of significant technical, social, cultural, and ritual values. Igbo Ukwu materials suggest a widespread use of bronze objects for economic, ritual, and aesthetic purposes in prehistoric times. It is clear that the ancient Igbo Ukwu metallurgists knew their onions because they Artistic style of Igbo Ukwu culture is unlike anything else.